conflict between Russia and Ukraine is entering an exceptionally dangerous phase, one that is transforming both the military balance on the ground and the diplomatic landscape behind closed doors. Analysts in Kyiv have begun to publicly acknowledge a reality that has been quietly building for months. Russia's rapidly growing ability to strike Ukraine's supply routes using unmanned aerial vehicles has become the single most decisive turning point of the war in 2025. These UAV attacks are no longer isolated incidents. They are shaping the battlefield in ways that resemble direct strikes on the arteries that keep Ukraine's military alive. Instead of gaining a few villages or tactical patches of land, Russia is hitting the deep logistical networks that feed Ukraine's frontline units. As ammunition depots, fuel storage sites, and reinforcement routes continue to suffer relentless assaults from Russian drones, a severe shortage of critical resources has emerged across almost every sector of Ukraine's defensive infrastructure. In simple terms, Russia is tightening the noose around Ukraine's ability to defend itself. This shift has already generated dramatic consequences on the diplomatic stage. The tactical balance leaning so sharply toward Russia has significantly weakened Kyiv's leverage in international negotiations. In Washington, a dramatic internal struggle is unfolding. Several influential figures within President Donald Trump's administration are openly pushing for an end to the war under terms that would strongly favor Moscow. Their argument is unapologetically pragmatic. Ukraine should accept a settlement now, they say, because waiting will only ensure worse conditions in the future as the country's military resources are being depleted at an alarming pace. However, Ukrainian diplomats and European partners are fighting intensely to convince President Trump to maintain pressure on Russia in pursuit of a more balanced outcome. Their objective is clear. They want to prevent Ukraine from being cornered into accepting terms shaped entirely by Russia's current battlefield advantage. On November 30th, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff held a meeting with Ukrainian negotiators in Florida. The purpose was to discuss Washington's proposed plan to end the conflict, a plan that Ukrainian officials believe is excessively favorable to Russia. During the earlier phases of the conflict, Ukraine had a clear advantage in drone warfare. Through advanced tactics and innovative technology, Ukrainian UAVs compensated for their shortage of manpower, slowing Russia's advance along several key axes. But by the fall of this year, Russia had succeeded in overtaking Ukraine in the race for drone supremacy. Russian forces now possess numerical superiority in UAVs across important sectors of the front line, while employing newly refined tactics that severely disrupt Ukraine's logistical systems. Experts warn that this trend places Ukraine at a disadvantage both on the battlefield and at the negotiating table in 2026. With communication lines destroyed and the concept of a secure rear area fading rapidly, the pressure on Ukraine is intensifying. But despite Russia's growing dominance in drone operations, analysts note that Moscow still has not achieved a true strategic breakthrough. Large-scale troop movements remain nearly impossible due to the dense presence of cheap reconnaissance drones that can detect and strike almost any movement by personnel or vehicles. What is more concerning for Kyiv is the possibility that Ukraine may be worn down completely unless it regains the initiative in high-tech UAV warfare. Russia's expanded use of small drones has dramatically reshaped the conflict. These UAVs now conduct reconnaissance, direct artillery fire, and strike Ukrainian frontline positions. A key shift occurred in 2024 after Ukrainian troops pushed into the sea region. Moscow responded by creating a specialized unit known as Ruby, composed of Russia's most skilled drone operators. Their mission was clear: disrupt Ukrainian logistics at sea. To achieve this, they deployed drones controlled through fiber optic cables, allowing them to evade Ukrainian electronic warfare systems. Ukraine's supply chain collapsed rapidly, forcing Kyiv's troops to withdraw in the spring of 2024. After the battle for sea, the Ruby unit expanded operations to eastern Ukraine. Their methods proved so effective that they began training other Russian UAV units. According to Ukrainian officers, Ruby's focus is not directed toward infantry targets, but on mid-range strategic objectives located nearly 19 kilometers behind the front line. Their priorities are clear: destroy Ukraine's logistical hubs and eliminate drone operators. As a result, Ukraine's drone teams and supply units are suffering casualties at a rate even higher than frontline infantry. This has forced Ukrainian drone pilots to operate FPV drones from greater distances, reducing accuracy and overall effectiveness. Meanwhile, Russia is penetrating deeper into Ukrainian territory with drones that have significantly longer range. Military analysts highlight that Russia has developed a particular advantage in mid-range drone strikes, regularly hitting targets between 40 and 70 kilometers behind Ukrainian lines. While Ukraine's FPV drones remain active near the front, Kyiv lacks the long-range systems necessary to strike Russian logistics, command centers, and strategic nodes. The danger zone on the map is shifting steadily toward Ukraine's rear areas as Russia continues to improve its drone warfare capabilities. Beyond fiber optic systems, Russian forces are deploying fixed-wing Lancet drones with a range of nearly 40 kilometers. These platforms have given Moscow a notable edge in the diplomatic arena. This advantage is evident in the United States' proposed peace plan. The plan, initially composed of 28 points, was designed during ongoing negotiations between Washington and Moscow. According to sources familiar with the discussions, the original version required Ukraine to surrender the entire Donbas region, accept strict limits on the size of its military, and abandon its ambition to join NATO. After intense backlash, parts of the proposal were revised, but details remain confidential. The meeting in Miami aimed to determine whether the United States and Ukraine can narrow their differences enough to present a unified position. If they succeed, American envoys may begin a shuttle diplomacy phase, including a planned trip to Russia this week by Special Envoy Wickoff. Behind the scenes, a broader strategy is taking shape within the Trump administration, one heavily influenced by the belief that economic incentives can achieve what traditional diplomacy cannot. Sources close to the talks describe this as the culmination of a Kremlin strategy set in motion before President Trump's inauguration. Moscow has sought to persuade Washington to view Russia primarily as a land of economic potential rather than a military threat. When an early version of the 28-point plan leaked, it triggered fierce criticism. European leaders and Ukrainian officials argued that the proposal overwhelmingly reflected Russian talking points and violated nearly every red line set by Kyiv. Their primary concern is that Russia may be rewarded with lucrative trade opportunities. At the same time, Ukraine has synchronized its sanctions regime with the United States, imposing penalties on individuals and companies involved in Russia's drone production industry. President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that Ukraine had implemented 2 new sanctions packages. The first targets 26 Russian entities deeply tied to the energy sector. The second targets 36 individuals and 13 companies involved in the development, production, and deployment of Russian drones, including those linked to the Rubicon Center, which tests new weapon systems and directly supports combat operations. Russian President Vladimir Putin has adopted a cautious but optimistic tone regarding the U.S. peace proposal. Yet comments from his envoys suggest Moscow believes it can secure even more favorable terms. Despite the flurry of diplomatic activity, many analysts remain skeptical about whether Putin is genuinely prepared to compromise or accept the level of concessions necessary for a lasting settlement. He is widely believed to have successfully pushed back against President Trump's demand for an immediate ceasefire during their August meeting in Alaska, reducing the likelihood of additional U.S. sanctions. Meanwhile, Russia has intensified its military pressure. Over recent months, Moscow has expanded both frontline assaults and long-range strikes, targeting major Ukrainian cities and critical infrastructure. Analysts conclude that with every incremental victory, every newly captured village, and every square kilometer taken, Russia strengthens its negotiating position. The trajectory is clear. As long as Russia continues to apply pressure through drones and incremental territorial gains, the diplomatic balance will continue to tilt further in its favor.